All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our Guava webinar today. It's Archiving Business Communication in the Cloud. My name is Sheldon Mills. I'm a marketing manager here at Guava, and I'm here with Q Mangus, the Director of Product Marketing here at Guava. First off, just want to start off by thanking everyone for joining us, and we hope you find everything we're going to share extremely useful. We're going to have a Q&A session addressing the most frequent questions we receive regarding cloud archiving, best practices, and then retain. I'll be filling some questions, and Q will be answering them. We have a number of frequently asked questions we want to get to. But if you have any questions as we go through the webinar, please put those through in the Q&A panel or the chat panel, and Q will be sure to address those. And how you do that is just click on the Q&A or chat icon, and you can type those in. Q?
Yep, thanks everyone for being here. We're excited to bring you this cloud archiving webinar, and hope we can benefit from what we're going to be talking about.
Awesome. Just so you know, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you the recording afterwards in case things you wanted to go over again or pass on to a colleague or anything. Let's see. I guess we should just jump right into it. First question. We get this a lot. First off, how can the cloud help me, my IT with IT management and day-to-day tasks?
So the question is, how can the cloud help with IT management and some of the day-to-day tasks? So the idea here is that we know that your IT department, and if you're an IT administrator, you have tons of stuff that you have to work on, right? There's things that you have to manage every day. There's an infrastructure that you have to manage. There's software programs. There's compliance issues. There's networking, hardware. There's all kinds of stuff that you have to deal with. I won't go into these, but there's about 43 generally identified challenges of IT management. And what's great is that cloud services can reduce or eliminate all but 12 areas. And so the idea is that you're reducing your complexity, your expenses by about 70%. And the other great thing too is that you're able to manage everything. Or manage expectations, I should say. What that means is that with cloud, you can have a single known fixed cost. So now you have one cost for everything that you're going to do, because you've now push that out to a cloud vendor, and now you don't have to worry about having all these different costs that can come into play. Let's say, for example, that your hardware is out of date and you need to plan to replace that. Well, that's something that you're going to have to now budget for. You're going to have to go out, acquire the hardware, work with budgets, get the contract going, get that approved. However, with the cloud, you don't have to worry about that. That's one cost you don't even have to worry about, is that hardware cost. So now your infrastructure, your hardware, your software, your support, your networking, those are all handled in the cloud. And with a good cloud vendor, you don't even have to worry about those. So now your complexity is reduced by 70%. The other thing too, that with the cloud, with your IT systems in the cloud, your workforce can access their systems anywhere at any time with a 99.9% uptime. So now another benefit there, and how it can help with your day-to-day tasks, is that your employees can access the systems that they need, those critical systems, and they can access them anywhere at any time. And then one thing as well is your costs and overhead is reduced. And as I was stating before, capital expenses and unknown varying operating costs are eliminated, right? You have that fixed costs. And the other thing too is that your IT department can actually focus on things that will drive business. You don't have to be worrying about managing that infrastructure. That's now done in the cloud. So you can focus on other things, other strategic initiatives, other things that are coming down the road. Now, there's other things as well that you can rely on with the cloud. These are just some surveys that was done recently from Osterman Research. Basically, they did a study with organizations to see what the cloud did for them, and nearly all businesses saw a boost in improvements boost improvements in IT after they implemented the cloud. So some of the things that they saw is that 93% of the companies saw at least one area of improvement in their IT department. 52% saw an increase in data center efficiency and utilization. 47% actually saw their costs lowered. And then 80% experienced improvements within 6 months. So really, a move to the cloud is something that will really benefit you, and it will help with those day-to-day tasks to make sure that you can, that your day-to-day tasks are simplified, and that you have those fixed costs that you know of. And as you can see, there are improvements by moving that to the cloud. And I mean, think about this. This is something else that I didn't mention, but one thing to remember, and this is pretty common with the cloud, is that cloud vendors keep their stuff up to date. So you're always going to be on the latest stuff, the latest version of their software, the latest version of the hardware. They have SLAs that will ensure that your stuff is up. So you're going to be on the newest stuff, and you're going to be guaranteed uptime. So once again, the cloud has many benefits, and it's going to help you in your day-to-day business.
That's good. It leads us right into the next question is, what are the costs of cloud, and can it really save you money? A lot of people have heard that the cloud is more expensive than on-premise.
So yeah, so true. That's something to be aware of, and I want to make a mention of this really quick. Is this was also done from a survey about that Osterman Research did about best practices for messaging, collaboration, security, archiving, and encryption in the cloud. He found that only 21% of decision makers and influencers are confident in their estimates in the cost of providing messaging capabilities. This could be applied to other services as well. So the reason why I bring this up is that, as Sheldon asked, or as he stated, many people think that the cloud is more expensive. However, most people are not that confident in their ability to estimate their actual costs. So once again, this is something to remember, is what the true cost of ownership is of the cloud. What is your return on investment, and what is it truly going to cost you, and how that compares. And most companies find that the cloud actually is less expensive. Let me skip a couple of slides here. So, and this is a big thing to remember. To help you understand what it's really going to cost you, you have to remember this idea of an iceberg, right? So in the iceberg, you see a little bit of it, right? You see when you are looking at your costs, you're going to see the cost of hardware and software. But what you don't see is everything else that you're doing to support that hardware and that software. So, for example, if you have an email system, you have to have the servers on site. We're talking on-prem. You have to have the servers on site. You have to have a place to put them. There's real estate, right? You have to have the power, the heating, the cooling for that. You have to be able to have backup for that and disaster recovery. What are the costs to manage it and maintain it? What are your implementation costs? Your support costs? What's the storage going to cost you? Your bandwidth, your space, and the backup. So, backup generator or universal power supply. So those are all costs that have to be figured in and may not be something that you think about. But in the cloud, you don't have to worry about those costs. You have that fixed monthly cost. And so your total cost of ownership really is less with the cloud. And that's been seen time and time again. So here's an example of, just a simple example of that true cost of ownership on-prem versus the cloud, as I stated, right? The things that you don't see. Okay, so there's hardware, there's operating costs, administrative costs, and software. And then in the cloud, of course, you don't have any of those costs. All you have is the cloud service fee. So possibly when you're looking at budget and you see what it costs monthly, it may be a shock because the cloud could look like it costs more monthly. But when you consider all of the costs, it actually is less. It will cost your company less. And then, as we stated, there's that idea of being able to have a fixed cost that you know that's coming every month, so you don't have to worry about, a server going down and having to replace that. Once again, that real estate that it could be taking up. It's something that you have that fixed cost that you're always going to know is coming. So really, in this example, there's a savings of about 35% year over year when you move to the cloud as opposed to on-prem. So even though it seems that it may be more expensive, in reality, a move to the cloud saves you money.
Right. So you addressed the cost, but we get a question pretty often about what other barriers are there other barriers to adopting the cloud, and then what might those be?
Yeah. So there, as we stated, this idea of costs may be something that's a barrier if people don't understand the costs that may be associated with the cloud. Some other things too are, as we see here, this was a survey done by CIO Insight, and they found that the top barriers for cloud adoption are security, legal compliance, and privacy. And from the survey, about 55% of people surveyed thought that the cloud may be less secure than an on-prem system. 39% viewed that there were legal and compliance issues, maybe reasons why they couldn't move to the cloud, and then 37% thought of privacy issues that may keep them from adopting the cloud. We'll touch a little bit about each one of these things and how the cloud can and how Guava Cloud Services and the offering that we have with Retain and cloud archiving can help with all of these barriers. But these are the top identified barriers to adopting the cloud.
About this time, everybody, after you've seen the benefits of the cloud, or at least talked about some of them, they're asking about it. They're interested for one reason or another. We get asked a lot, how can I help, say, the different departments in my organization see the benefits of the cloud, kind of get buy-in throughout the organization?
This one's huge, and this is something that's brought up a lot. If you're in IT, there's a good chance that you understand the need for the cloud and why you should be going to the cloud. However, it may be difficult convincing others that you should go there, that the costs are or that the change is worth it. So some of the things, and just some things here that we've identified and where each role or each department may benefit and where you can really help them to see the need to moving to the cloud. So first of all, if you're talking to the CIO, their big thing, right, is always the bottom line. So they're concerned about costs. And so the big thing to take note of for CIOs, so if there's a CIO on the call, just take note of this, or if there's those on the call that need to talk to their CIO about this, remember that you're concerned about costs and usability. The cloud will reduce your overall costs, and as we stated earlier, cloud vendors keep their solutions current and up to date on the latest release of their solutions, so it's going to be more usable. Your users are going to have a better experience if they're on the cloud because they're going to be on the latest and they're going to be guaranteed that uptime. For the IT director, the big thing is, as I stated before, that guaranteed uptime, being able to make sure that your users have access to the critical systems that they need. Plus, it's going to free up IT resources that would have been dedicated to managing hardware and infrastructure of on-prem solutions. So now those resources can be used for other core IT competencies, implementing a new system, going out and seeing what needs to be done, giving support to your employees. There's other things that your IT department has that they can do that now, by having things in the cloud, they don't have to worry about that management. Next, if you're talking about a chief legal counsel, this one is big because the cloud, depending on the solution, can help them with litigation readiness and case assessment. And this in particular has to do with the archiving, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. I know there's questions on this, but by having an archiving solution that's in the cloud that's easily accessible, chief legal counsel can be ready for litigation and case assessment by having a solution that's readily available and easy to use and is guaranteed to be up and running, so they have that ability to be ready. Okay, and then chief risk and compliance officer, they want to make sure that everything is compliant, right? And we talked about some of those concerns that people may have, and one of those is compliance. So the compliance officer needs to make sure that the cloud vendor conforms to all cloud regulations and guidelines. And so if they do, they'll be sure to know that they are that their risks are mitigated and that they are compliant. And so that's important when choosing a cloud vendor. And of course, we'll talk about the Guava cloud services that we have and the Retain cloud archiving and how it complies with all of the laws depending on the geography and the regulations when it comes to the cloud. You have the Chief Security Officer. They need to ensure that all data is secure and not subject to alteration or change. And if you decide to go with a private cloud vendor, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, you can ensure that your data never touches or mixes with another organization's data. And so that's important, and the Chief Security Officer needs to know that their data is going to be secure and it's going to be preserved. And that, of course, can be accomplished with the cloud and is a benefit there as well. And then finally, if you have your human resources department, they'll benefit from the cloud by having easy access to solutions and their processes anytime and anywhere. Once again, they have that guaranteed uptime and they'll be able to access it no matter where they are. These are a few departments and how they can benefit. I hope that can help you if you have not adopted the cloud, or if you have not adopted a cloud archiving solution. It can help you to show other departments on how they can benefit. Now, obviously, we're not talking about every department. There are others that would benefit as well, but these are just a few that we thought we'd touch on.
Awesome. Just as a reminder, if you do have a question, put those straight into the chat or the Q&A, and I think you can choose whether or not to send it just the presenter or to all the hosts. Try and send it to everybody anyway. That does bring me to another question. At this point, people want to know how Retain cloud archiving is different from other archiving solutions.
Good. Let's go there. So yes, the Retain archive, or the Retain cloud archiving solution. So we've talked about the cloud in general terms, touched a little bit on that. Let's talk, as you asked, about what makes Retain cloud archiving different. The big thing with Retain cloud archiving is that it provides unified archiving of multi-platform email, including Exchange, Office 365, Gmail, and GroupWise. And it also supports mobile communication, social media, instant messaging, and all of that, and then web searches as well. And all of that is archived into one central archive and in the cloud that you can access easily through the web access UI, or you can access it through an Outlook or email plugin. So now you can access all your electronic communication from one central location anytime, anywhere, because you have access via the web UI or via the Outlook or other email system plugin. And now you have compliance with retention laws because you have one central archive. You have the ability to quickly and easily search the archive and be able to produce electronic communication in case of litigation or in case of a regulatory audit. So you have that compliance. There's eDiscovery and export tools, so you can easily search the archive. You can place litigation holds. You can tag messages. You can perform redaction and strikeout. You can export messages or search terms to a PDF or a PST or even the publisher. And the publisher, or what we like to call it the standalone archive viewer, is actually something where you can export that, place that onto a portable media like a DVD, jump drive, or maybe push it onto Dropbox. And then you can give it to an outside team. It's fully indexed and searchable. Now that team can search that subset of the archive, perform redaction and strikeout without having to give them full access to the archive. That's a big thing that makes Retain different, is you have that standalone archive viewer, you have that ability to perform redaction and have those eDiscovery tools built in. Another great thing is if you're dealing with PST files that are scattered throughout your organization. That's a huge problem that many people running Exchange run into, is they have these personal archives for each person running Outlook. It's saved on each machine and they can be scattered throughout your organization on all these different machines. Retain can help with that. It can take all those PST files and put it into the archive. And then once the archiving solution is in place with Retain, your PST files are eliminated because now it's all archived into that one central archive. And I want to hit that once again, that there's a central archive of all electronic communication. So you'll have one central archive with one search, and you won't have to know what you're searching for, meaning what type of message it is. You do one search and all results come across. Now when it comes to Retain in the cloud, the architecture for Retain is it uses a private cloud. So that means you have full control of the data. The Retain cloud is flexible and scalable. So what happens with that, what that means is that you only use what you need and pay for what you need when you need it. And of course it's secure. There's full data encryption and 99.9% guaranteed uptime. And of course there's compliance with all data laws and regulations when it comes to the cloud. And further with the private cloud, here's just a little bit more of the view. With the private cloud architecture, your data resides on its own server and it never touches any other organization's data. So you'll know that your data is safe and secure in that private cloud. And here's just a view of how it works, right? The administrators can access it, there's mobile access, and the end users can access the Retain archive, and there's just the other pieces of the Retain system. The storage, the database, the server, the indexing engine, the worker, and the message system. But this is a view of the architecture. The point that I want to hit home is that Retain does use that private cloud, so your data doesn't mingle with others' data. And then here's a view of the web access as I was talking about before. So what's nice about this is that your users can see this, and this is something that makes Retain different is it looks like your email system. The folder structure is replicated, so when your users go into that web access archive viewer, they're going to see something that's familiar, and they can browse their own personal archive, or administrators or other named users can access the entire archive and can search that entire archive. Users can be granted different rights, like they can view their own archive as I stated, and they can restore messages to the live inbox if they want to, and if you want to give them access, they can export and forward as well. And then administrators have the ability from this to place litigation holds, tag messages, delete messages, forward them, export them, restore, and print them. Some of the tools there that you have, and you can see them up along the top of the page there. And then finally, let me just show you, here's an example of the search. As I stated before, this is a huge thing that Retain has, is the ability to search the entire archive from one central location. You do one search and all communication comes across. And as you can see on the left-hand side there, you can specify where you want to search. You can specify the scope. You can say if you want to see email messages, phone messages, appointments, text messages, Facebook likes, etc. You can see those and you can specify them, making the search even that much easier. And what's great is, as I stated before, one search brings in results for all your electronic communication from one central archive. And then here's a quick view of a little bit more about the search. Once again, that makes Retain different is we have powerful search tools. So as you start typing in, it's actually going to give you suggestions on what you should be typing. The suggestions come from subject, body, text, email address, tags, users, and other fields. As you search, letters and words are highlighted in the text, making it easier to find what you're looking for. And then, of course, the results are going to come in, and you'll be able to see multiple types of communication, whether that's an email, an SMS message, a Facebook message, etc. Then here's a quick view of the Outlook plugin. So your users can access the archive directly from within Outlook, and they can even cache messages within Outlook so they can access it offline. So if you have users that are remote, that are occasionally using Outlook on the road and they don't have access, they can access that directly from the cached archive that's directly in Outlook via that plugin. So that's some of the things that really makes Retain different, is that idea that all electronic communication is archived in one central location. You have the ability to search. You have the ability to access it from the web access or from the Outlook plugin. And that's all done in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about implementing that hardware. You can run that all from your cloud system.
Great. We do have a couple questions that came in through the Q&A. One is about Retain. They ask why Retain, and you've been going over it, but they're asking isn't it the same as archiving email messaging on Google Vault or Office 365? I wonder if you could just highlight. You explained specifically this is Retain and this is different, but can you say, hey, Google Vault doesn't have this, or 365 doesn't have this, or this is what makes Retain? Can you highlight that once more for us?
Sure. So that's good. I mean, I know that, especially since we were talking about email archiving, that if you're going with Office 365, Office 365 does offer a in-place archive, an online archive, a built-in archiving solution, and then Gmail has Google Vault. The big thing to take note of, let me first touch on Office 365. And actually, you know what, this actually applies to both. Both Office 365 and Google Vault and many other archiving solutions, their big drawback is that they only archive email. So that's a solution for archiving email. Whereas with Retain, you can archive email, multi-platform email. So if you're running Exchange and Gmail, or Office 365 and Exchange, or Office 365 and GroupWise, you have the ability to support all of your email systems in one central location. This is pretty common for universities, as an example, where like the staff will be on Office 365 and students will be on Gmail. You have the ability to archive both, and they're both supported into the one central archive, and it's a platform agnostic archive. So that means if you ever need to move, so if today you're on Exchange and tomorrow you want to move to Gmail, that migration path is super easy because you have it archived in Retain Exchange. Then you implement Gmail, tie it to Retain. You don't have to worry. You have that old archive, the legacy system archived in Retain, and your new system archived in Retain. And now to your users it's seamless because they search the archive and they're going to see all messages, whether they're in your old system or in your new system. So that's something that is different than Office 365 or Gmail, is it's only email and it's only for that system. So if you are using Office 365 archiving and you want to move one day, you're going to have to pull all that out, export it, put it into the new system. But with Retain, it's a platform agnostic thing, so you don't have to ever worry about moving. Furthermore, with Office 365 in particular, this idea with the eDiscovery tools, it has eDiscovery, but it does not have redaction. So being able to redact your messages, this is especially important if you're government, right? If you have a FOIA request or whatnot, there's a lot of things that should not be part of the public record. And this also applies to all organizations. If you're ever involved in a court case, right, there's going to be information that isn't pertinent to that case that may be part of that export, and you need to be able to redact that. And Retain has that included. And then with Google Vault in particular, there's some issues when it comes to restoring emails to the live inbox. So we talked a little bit about that, right? With Retain, you have the ability to restore a message directly to the live system, whether that's directly onto Gmail. So if you have a user that's accidentally deleted an email or needs to find that, that's going to be in the Retain archive, and they can automatically, with basically a couple of clicks, get that back into their live inbox. And that applies for any email system, but in particular Google Vault does not support that. So that's a value add that Retain has over or to Gmail, is being able to restore that. And then finally, one other thing I just want to take note of is, once again, as I stated, Retain supports all electronic communication into one central archive, where other vendors like an Office 365 archiving or a Google Vault do not. Plus, with Google Vault in particular, it does archive Google Hangouts. Actually, there's a couple of things that I just remembered that I want to touch on. But Google Vault does archive Google Hangouts, but only on the record Google Hangouts messages. So if you have your users that turn that off and turn it to off the record, that's not going to be archived in Google Vault. Whereas Retain can archive any messages, whether they're on the record or off. It's going to be archived in Retain. And that reminds me, when it comes to Office 365 archiving, once again, it only archives email. So when it comes to like Yammer, if you're using Yammer social media, that enterprise social media, Retain can archive that into the same central archive as it would with the email messages. And then just to build a little bit, I don't think I touched on this, just in case you're curious, for social media, Retain supports Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Yammer. For instant messaging, it's Skype for Business, Google Hangouts, AOL IM, and Yahoo IM. And then for mobile communication, it's Android, BlackBerry, and iOS. So that's really the difference between Retain and some of those other archiving vendors.
Awesome. We have a few more questions that have to do with scenarios and how, I guess, Retain connects with and archives things like Facebook and email and whatnot. And I know you're going to get into that. But before we do that, we have another question that's cloud specific. They asked if Retain private cloud is a proprietary cloud for Retain, or can you use any cloud available?
Great question. So Retain there's the ability to put it into any cloud system. So it's built so that you can run that in. So let's say, for example, let me give you a few examples. If you have your own data center and you run everything technically as the cloud, but it's a data center that you have on your own, Retain can be put into that data center. If you want to run that on, say, like Azure or AWS cloud, Retain supports that as well. So there's the ability where Guava, we have data centers where we can host your Retain system, and that's the Guava Cloud Services, and it's Guava data centers, and it's supported there. However, if you have a distributor or reseller that you work with that has their own data centers, Retain will work there. If you want to put them in your data center, you can do that as well. So yeah, it is flexible. Retain can be put into any kind of cloud system that you want to use it with. So, and we do have, and depending on the geography of where you are, we do have resellers that we work with. For example, in EMEA and Asia Pac and Australia, those areas, we actually, the data center is geographic and local, and so it can be placed there. But like I said, you don't have to use the Guava data centers. You can use the data center of your choice.
Awesome. We have a couple questions that go into more of the when a company would need to archive social media and chats and other things like that. But I know you're going to touch on that here in a minute, Q. We do have a question. Does Retain archive have a size limit for users, like 1 terabyte per user, or for business, 1 terabyte per company, things like that?
There's not a limit on how much you can archive and Retain, but what there is there's pricing structures, right? So what I'm guessing is your question probably has to do with how much do you get. So let me back up. There is a base price for Retain monthly when it comes to the Retain cloud archiving. If it's hosted, right, in the Guava data centers, there's obviously going to be a base price, and that will give you a certain amount of data. And then if you go above and beyond that, there's going to be storage above and beyond that you can purchase. I would have to answer that offline because it all depends on your organization size and different factors to how much the cloud will cost. There's different tiers and whatnot. So I will follow up with you on that, on exactly how much that would cost. But yes, there is a base cost per month for Retain that includes a certain amount of storage, and then there are tiers depending on what you need to be able to archive. And I apologize, I don't know what the base number is on the amount of storage. I can follow up and get that offline for you there. But yes, there is a base number, and then you can add more storage on top of that.
Great. So let's get into, I guess, more of the Retain. We have a couple questions at the Q&A, and these are also But the questions we get all the time is, what does Retain Archive, and how does that work, I guess, specifically with email, with social media, and how that all ties together?
Great. So with email systems, I stated this before, but specifically with Exchange, Office 365, Gmail, and GroupWise, we archive all email messages, attachments, appointments, tasks, calendar items, and then of course the metadata so that you can go back and search. And all these messages and attachments are indexed so you can quickly and easily search them. For social media, I talked about the platforms that we support, and the way that we do it is it works as a proxy. So it's what we're talking about when it comes to social media and instant messaging is it's corporate stuff. Meaning, I shouldn't say corporate stuff. It's when people access social media or instant messaging on your network. So as they access that on the network and that traffic's coming in or going out, Retain will intercept it. We integrate with the firewall, and so it pulls that information down as it's coming across, and it will actually, what's really cool with Retain Social in particular is that the social media and the instant messaging Retain, that messaging is pushed through the Retain Social proxy so that now Retain can monitor and filter those messages. So if there's messages that are inappropriate, that violate company policy, Retain can block them from ever being posted, and then can alert someone that has been tried to be posted, and then it archives them as well. So now as your users are accessing social media on the network, you have that oversight. And you have the ability to monitor, filter, and archive. And of course, that's all archived into the same archive as email. And then social media and instant messaging is threaded, so you can see these messages in context. So you'll be able to see, if I'm having an instant message conversation, you'll be able to see that message string and see that conversation as a whole. And then for mobile, we support Android, BlackBerry, and iOS, and it depends on the mobile device. But for Android, there's an app that sits on that phone and will pull all the messaging off, and that's SMS, text messaging, MMS, and phone call logs on the Android. And then for BlackBerry, it integrates with the BlackBerry Enterprise Service and pulls down BBM, PIN, SMS, MMS, and phone call logs. And for iOS, we actually do something innovative where we've partnered with CellTrust to provide a separate app that goes onto your iOS device, and that separate app assigns a separate phone number, a mobile business phone number to the phone, and allows you to call and text securely and separate from the native iOS iMessage, for example, or the native phone call. So now you have the ability to have a dual persona, right? So that personal stuff stays personal. They use that for their personal information, and business stuff will be business, and it's all, you have oversight on that, and it's archived into Retain, and it's secure and compliant. And that also works on Android if you want to have that dual persona. Plus, with mobile, Retain integrates directly with BBM protected, so BlackBerry Messenger protected, for secure and encrypted mobile messaging there, to be able to archive those as well. And Retain gives you the ability to archive mobile phone calls as well. So that's a little bit about the mobile, but that's how it works with each different piece. With email, it ties directly to the server, whether that's Exchange, Office 365, Gmail, or GroupWise, pulls the messages down directly and archives all those types of messages. And then for social media, instant messaging, mobile, I talked on how that works as well.
Great. So I was responding to a question privately. Did you touch on eDiscovery and how Retain can help with that?
I did hit on that. I can go over that again. So the big thing with Retain and eDiscovery is there's those built-in tools that Retain has to be able to place litigation holds, legal holds, be able to tag messages and redact. Let me show you just from this view here. There's some of the eDiscovery tools there to be able to place litigation holds, be able to tag, and these message tags can be confidential messages or message tags. They can be public, whatever, but you can place tags on messages, and then that makes a search when you go back that much easier. You can export these messages, and then of course with the powerful search tools, it makes eDiscovery so much easier because you can search. And if you want to, you could grant rights to different legal teams and other users to be able to access the archive and search it, the entire archive, or you can use what we call the publisher, the standalone archive viewer, where you do a search, you export those results to the standalone archive viewer. Now you can give that to an outside team, whether on a jump drive or a DVD, and they can then look through that subset of the archive, perform redaction, and strike out. So you have those eDiscovery tools to be able to search and to be able to place litigation holds and redact and strike out and be prepared in case of litigation or other open records requests.
This brings us to the question I always get from everybody, obviously, is what does retain cost, and then is that cost really worth it?
Good, great question. Just getting to another slide here. Yeah, so retain, I kind of touched on that a little bit. Retain cloud archiving, it's a monthly cost, and it's priced per user, and then yes, there's a storage cost as well. And so you do have a monthly cost, and there's volume discounts depending on the size of your organization. That's something that if you want a price quote, we can get that to you. But yeah, the pricing depends on your organization and different factors as well. But yes, the price is per user, and it's a monthly cost, and the price is worth it. Of course, I'm going to say that, right? But let me tell you why. The idea is that you are compliant, that you are prepared for litigation, and that you can access and manage your data. By having retained cloud archiving, you have quick and easy access to data. It's going to really reduce the time that your IT spends on looking for emails, on supporting your employees. It's going to You'll be loving life if you're involved in litigation and you have retained, because you're going to be able to easily and quickly go back and find the information that you need to be able to prove your case. So the idea is, yes, there is a cost involved with cloud archiving, but that cost more than pays for itself if you are involved in litigation or have any kind of issues that way, and it pays for itself in your increased productivity, and your email systems are going to run better. It's just it does end up paying for itself.
Awesome. We do have another question asking about if we offer retain on-prem as well, which the answer is yes, but maybe you could go into that a little bit. Also, if anybody's interested, we recently named, I guess, the best overall value and champion for content email archiving by Infotech. Specifically in highly regulated industries like finance and healthcare. So you don't have to take our word for it. Run the Gartner Magic Quadrant. You can get that report as well as the Infotech one from our website. And if anyone's interested, we can just add that in on the email we send out with the webinar recording as well. So yeah, do we offer it on-prem?
Yep, absolutely. So the same functionality that we've been talking about here can be offered on premise. So if you're in a situation where you want to put this in place on your network on premise, you can. If you're forced to do that based on regulations, you can do that as well. But everything we've talked about here today also applies to the on-prem system that we offer and retain.
Oh, I've got one here. It says, I want to know what the next steps would be for implementing cloud archiving.
So here's some steps. It's really easy to get started with the cloud. Basically, you just we connect your email system and other messaging systems to retain. It's configured to archive email, social media, instant messaging, and mobile. You grant rights to named users. You access the web UI, and you're ready to go. So those are the steps to really get started. If you're interested in the cloud, you can try it out for yourself. You can actually get free archiving for 10 users, free for 30 days. So you can put it into your system, tie your system to retain, see how it's going to work for you. You get it free for 30 days. You can see how it's going to work, test it out. If you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact Guava authorized partner or your sales representative. Visit guava.com to learn more about that. But to get started, you can try it out for yourself. You can get a quote and see how it's going to work for you. And to get a quote, just visit guava.com/quote. And you can get, as we talked about pricing, you can get a quote on exactly how it would work for your organization.
And the demo as well, if you want to see how that would work specifically to your organization in detail, you can get a demo as well. You said that, didn't you? Yeah. Let's see. One more question in the Q&A, and just one more we get a lot. If you have any examples of how cloud archiving has helped an organization.
Absolutely. I have a couple examples here. One moment here. Skip here. So a great one is with the Baltimore Police Department. I would imagine most of you on this call are familiar with what happened last year with the riots in Baltimore and the whole situation with how that went down. Well, as a repercussion to that, and you may not know this, or maybe you do, Baltimore Police was asked by the Department of Justice to get all their information. What I'm saying is that the Department of Justice wanted to know, wanted all their information, all their email, mobile, social media, all that kind of information, that it was specific to employees that were involved in the case. And they wanted to know information, other information, similar information, to kind of do an audit of Baltimore police when it comes to, the problems they were having with supposed or alleged racial profiling and alleged other issues that they were having, as we saw in the news, right? Well, what happened was they were asked for the previous 7 years of information, and guess how much time they had to produce all that? They had 7 days to produce 7 years of information. I don't know about you, but I would imagine that would be pretty scary. And if you don't have an archiving solution, for those of you on this call who don't, I bet that would really be scary. How hard would it be for you to be able to go back and find all your email, your social media, your mobile communication for 7 years, for the past 7 years? Well, luckily for Baltimore Police, they had retain. They were able to go back and find that quickly and easily. They were able to produce it well within the 7 days that they were required. They were able to show everything that had happened, and they were able to comply with that request from the Department of Justice. So, and now, of course, going forward, if they ever have that happen again, or if they have a FOIA request or other requests, they can easily produce it, and they have that confidence to know that they can produce it because they have gone through that and they have retained, and they can easily and quickly produce the messaging that they need. So, great case study in which in a lot of cases, this could have been something really scary and really difficult for an organization to do, but Baltimore Police was able to do it quickly and easily because of retain. Another one here is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They use retain to archive all their email messages in one central location. They can quickly and easily access that, and that helps them meet compliance requirements. And as a federal agency, there's a ton of them, right? They need to be able to archive all their email, their social media, their mobile communication, and they can do all that directly in retain. And then finally, we have the LA Police Department. They have been with us for years. Very similar situation to what we've been talking about before. Is they need to be able to make sure that their information is easily accessible and that it stays in a U.S. data center with instant access at any given moment. The Department of Justice requires that of them. And so with the cloud, LAPD can, with retained cloud archiving, they can ensure that they're compliant and can be easily conform to regulation compliance and FOIA requests if needs be, and they can produce that information in the same way we talked about with Baltimore Police. So obviously the idea and the reason why I brought these three up as examples is that they're in highly regulated industries, right? They're in situations with federal government or with police departments that they have a whole different set of rules that most organizations don't have to comply with. And so what that means for you is that you can be assured that by having retained cloud archiving, you can meet the requirements that you have, and you can be able to quickly and easily produce information as you need it. So that's a few examples we have. I know that those are requested, and hope that helps. You see the need for archiving.
All right. I think that's it. Is there anything else on your end, Q?
Nope, that's all the questions. Thanks everyone for your time, and thanks for your participation today.
Just as a quick reminder, we will send an email out to everyone who participated with the link to this webinar recording. And if you have any questions, please let us know, and we will answer them or find someone who can. So thank you.
Thanks everyone.